Well, greetings and welcome back, everybody. And this episode, we're going to be interviewing Nirdosh Jagota. And we had a chance to have a couple of conversations prior to this, but we really wanted to be able to kind of bypass maybe some of the technical challenges we had. So we're going to repeat this interview process. And so if I ask questions because it sounds like I already know some of the answers, that's because Nirdosh shared with his time with us last week and shared some great stories, childhood, mentors, thoughts on leadership, the future of pharma. So this is going to be a fun interview process. Let's start out, Nirdosh, if we can, just to have you share a little bit about your early life growing up in India, and perhaps along with that, what initially inspired you to get into the pharmaceutical industry?
No, thanks, JP. Looking forward to our conversation. I guess I go back to my life history and trying to understand it myself, how I came about doing different things over time. From the childhood, I was born in a family where there were more physicians than anyone else. So in the beginning, I thought maybe I should go in medicine. But I found out in my early childhood days itself that just the sight of, blood will make me faint. So I could not do that even if I wanted to do. And I got inspired by my uncle, who was a pharmaceutical executive running a multinational company in India. So he introduced me to the concept of, pharmaceutical sciences. So that's how I got interested in pharmaceutical sciences. But before I went to pharmaceutical sciences, I did try dental school for 3 months. Same reason. When once I started seeing the blood there and in one of the demos, I decided there's no way I could continue. So I actually took a few months off because the year had already started, the academic year. Did some other things, some volunteering work for a year, and then I started back in pharmacy school. And that's how my journey in pharmacy began.
That's great. You mentioned the uncle being kind of inspiring to you in other ways in your early life, correct? Can you talk a little bit about that? It's funny because we are often who we hang out with, we are who we're influenced by, which is why we have to make wise choices of who we surround ourselves with. But it also works to the positive when we surround ourselves with people. And naturally, you had this uncle. Can you talk a little bit about his character and ethics and maybe some of the things that influenced you?
Yeah, I was very close to him, and I'm still very close to him, even if we live so many miles apart. He was doing his medicine in a college which was not that far from our home. So I was in the same city for 2 years as a very young child, and he was in medical school. So that way I interacted even more with my uncle just because of the proximity. But he's a very funny guy, very bright, and he gets along with people. He connects well with everyone, and he had this very special affection for me, I will say. He always considered me as one of his sons, and we have been close to each other. And I was just impressed by how he went about his career. He actually went to the elitist school in India for his medical school. And then he did his MD in medicine. So he was in pharmaceuticals, landed up in GlaxoSmithKline. They used to call it a SmithKline French those days. And, he took me to his office a couple of times. And I was so impressed with the factory, the way the manufacturing is being done. I looked at the plant when I was in 10th grade. And it's just, the proximity to him and his leadership style, where everybody, liked him. And then he was traveling the world. So, you cannot ask for anything better at that age, that you have a good paying job, a public service part of it is there also. And then you are able to see the world at the same time. So you got 3-in-1 type thing. So it was a very natural for me to, get attracted with something like that.
You have gone on to obviously become quite a leader in your own right. Were there any things you just mentioned his leadership style? What were there any things that stood out about that are memorable to you now?
Yeah, to me, I found a sense of purpose in him. He always had, there was something about his job and caring for patients, which always showed up, right? His passion, and I will say the purpose for life. He had this purpose for life. He wanted to accomplish certain things. We talk about zinc now in cold weather and allergies or whatnot. He's the first one to do that study, to understand the impact of zinc on human health, right? So I saw that sense of purpose in him, and I wanted to do some public service also. I just could not find the path forward other than what I did in my career, which has been both. Of course, there's a business when you run a pharmaceutical company or work for it, but there's always that sense of purpose in our life that you actually catering to patient in that. So this is why I told you earlier that I wanted to be a physician, but I just could not do because of my I get disability of some kind. And so I landed up in the pharmacy school. Yeah.
You've now enjoyed a career that spans 30 years in regulatory and quality roles in senior executive levels. What have been some of the most significant milestones for you in that 30 years?
Yeah, I may have told you last time too, I am tempted to write something on the bosses I had in my career. So I have been fortunate to have incredible people who were my supervisors over time. So I will say my milestones were more about learning from these people than anything else. I give you small examples. My second boss, my first boss taught me that in a pharmaceutical company, you have to make connections in the large company. And don't look for the senior level people. You make connections with your colleagues because one day they all will be senior and you will grow with them, right? So that was one learning I had from him, making connections around the globe when you work for Bristol Myers Squibb or Wyatt or Merck. My second boss was so good, Dr. Richard Gurral, he's no more, but he was connected to everybody in his department. There were like 2,500 of us, but even the junior most person in Singapore will feel like that he knows Richard very well. So that characteristics of, treating people with respect, responding to their communication, even if you just say thank you or yes, doing that made a big difference. So that was my learning. Then in my mid-career, I came across somebody else who was head of commercial at a medium-sized company. So we were traveling once together. So I asked this gentleman, I said, what is your biggest fear in such a senior level role? I was in this corporate jet with him. He said, Nirdosh, believe it or not, the only thing which I always struggle to figure out if people are telling me the truth or not. He said, when you come to my job, I'm surrounded by so many people and most of them will always say yes to everything. So I want to know objectively what is the right thing so that I can make the right decision. So I learned that day that I'm going to give my supervisors what are the facts, summarize them in a very short form, give them those two options. These are two options from my side. This is where it is. It is my recommendation. And then I will, line up with the company, whatever decision the company makes, but this is what I believe is happening. So I think that learning helped me a lot. And I can go on. At each stage, I learned something new. Even today in my consulting business, I'm learning from my, customers. So I will say, if you look at the career growth, it's more about learning than anything else, and then respecting people at the same time. So respect for people and a desire to learn, those two things keep you going. Yeah.
I think that's really powerful. There's, I'm paraphrasing, I may get the quote wrong, but there's that old quote that said, essentially, when the student is ready, the mentor will appear, right?
That is correct.
And it sounds like even you learned at an early age with your uncle and others to have a sense of curiosity, a sense of observation, and learned, as you said, learning the what that was the growth path. We talk about setbacks in this program, failures, mistakes, setbacks. Um, I would say, as just from the outside, being in the R&D, pharma R&D industry, as you have been, that aspect of it is all about failing until you figure out the solution. Can you talk a little bit about that, of what you have learned in that model in that respect, as well as how does one continue to go forward while they're learning, to continue to deal with setbacks or things that don't work out, adversity, or things that don't work out like you thought it would?
No, I think that's a very good question. When I first started my career in digital microscope, I was working on a very interesting molecule called VR96, and it was, in scientific term, it would have been a breakthrough therapy for cancer. We were doing antibody drug conjugate when nobody else thought about it. So we did all the work, and we were ready to file that application to Food and Drug Administration, but the final clinical data came in, which was not looking good, right? So that was like a big disaster for me, because I put in so much hard work from my side, from the pharmaceutical development side, and I was so excited about that accomplishment. And then the result comes in, and then I was told that stop working on this, is done, we are done with it. Like, there's no need even to, write down a report and get it over with. It's just finished. So that was shocking to me that can happen after so much work. But, that's how science is, I learned over time, that science has some winners and some losers at time. But over a period of time, things will work out. If this compound didn't work, the next one will. And this is why companies go through, so many, advanced programs, and then some of them work, some of them don't, right? This is why cost of innovation is so high. So that's on the project side, that early on I learned the value of keeping patience in science, right? It's not going to be like the things you work on, they will turn around and you will get a breakthrough product, every time you're working with it. You need to try multiple attacks, right? Multiple things. On the personal side, I struggle in the beginning, making right decisions or decision making, right? It used to take me so much time to make a decision that I recognize my own weakness. And I read many books. I asked my boss to sponsor me for some decision making workshop they did. I will say throughout my career from year 2000 to 2010, probably I took 4 or 5 workshops with different professors or experts in the field. And I can tell you that after that, consciously working on it, it became so easy for me to make the decision based on risk-benefit analysis for the business, right? So, because making a decision is not a difficult thing. Making the right decision for the company with the right context, where business and patients are equally, benefit, is the challenge. And I think I learned that over time, with a hard way. I was not hardwired for it in some ways in the beginning, so I had to learn those skills and tools. But then, once you practice, it becomes your second nature. So that's the learning journey again for me.
It's funny you said that. I heard years ago a gentleman said that successful people make decisions quickly and rarely change them, and unsuccessful people make decisions slowly and change them often. And I thought that was a really interesting way to juxtapose it. I heard I saw an article a while back from a colleague of mine on LinkedIn, and he talked about the difference between mistakes and decisions. And a lot of times what we call mistakes are actually bad decisions. We should have made a better choice,
right,
in our process of decision making. But it's interesting that you came to that conclusion. And do you think it was getting exposed to other senior professionals through these workshops and seeing that they make they make mistakes too? It's just a matter of speed the process up.
I mean, when I started my journey, reading about how the mind works and how the brain functions and how the human psychology works, I went deep, right, to understand all of that, and then looking at leaders, how they were making decisions, of course. So I think I really enjoyed, talking to some of the thought leaders in the field. I had the privilege to be in the same room with a lot of professors in neuroscience who have been teaching this art. So, I mean, I was able to convince my companies to sponsor me for those workshops because they saw the value of what I was achieving for them also, right? So it's always a win-win, type situation. And some companies saw a systematic issue in decision-making, right? So I mean, if you look at a company like Roche, at some point when they integrated with Genentech, they were struggling with it, right? So they universally adopted, decision-making as a company, imperative. And from the CEO office down, everybody got trained on that, right? And so I think it's the timing also. Sometimes timing was right, and my interest in reading this about not only the science but the psychology of decision-making also helped me a lot. And so that's how I went about it. And then observing people, what kind of questions they ask and how they make decisions. I mean, I will tell you one saying I have, and when I am mentoring my staff, I did the same thing that way. I told them, so a lot of time people say, I need more data to make a decision. So I always taught them over time, if you have all the data, then we don't need you to make decision. I mean, that decision can be made by the junior-most person in the line, right? Your experience and anticipatory skills help us in making decisions faster based on limited information. That is the art of leadership. The art of leadership is not about asking 1,000 questions and getting every single data, because if you have that, then a junior-most person can do that analytics for you and you can choose the right answer, right? And you're only looking at the risk profile then. You need to develop skills to anticipate the business out there. You need to develop the skills to sense the environment around you. You need to have understanding of where the business is going for the company and what the value can be for the patient in our field. It can be any other product also. So I think it's all intermixed in decision-making in my mind. Decision-making is just not one thing. It's actually far beyond the simply making the decisions. It's how you make it, how you go about it, what other skills you have in which you have developed to help you in that process.
Yeah. It's really powerful. You've led teams now, global teams across all kinds of lines and different cultures, different languages. How have you found a way to successfully navigate where you have such a diverse group of people trying to organize around a common mission?
Yeah, I think it's, again, listening to them, engaging them in the dialogue. I just had a phone call from a top consulting company this morning about different topic, right? And they asked me, how are you able to globalize certain strategic initiatives in the roles you had? It's the same thing. It's engaging people, having them express their opinion, make them feel comfortable about expressing themselves, giving them a chance to speak up. And it's not about that you have to build consensus on your decision. It's more about letting them express their views. And once they know you have heard them, even if the decision is different, in the sense you may still stick with your decision in the end, based on all the analytics you have. It just makes a win-win situation, because those people feel more empowered that they were able to express themselves, may not have been able to convince somebody to change their opinion, but at least people showed the respect, they listened to them, and then even in the end, we all aligned to the same decision. So for me, that helped. It does take a little bit longer than just sending it, memo saying, thou shalt do this way. but then implementation becomes a lot more easier in the approach I have taken versus a one-way traffic type thing where you just tell them what to do, and then it takes even longer to implement the same thing. So,
If I have it correctly, you've been responsible for the successful submission and approval of more than 25 small molecules, biologics, and vaccines. Is that correct?
that is correct. Yeah.
Can you discuss with us the most challenging submission you ever faced and how you overcame it?
No, I think the most interesting one for me and challenging in some ways too because of time constraints was the Ebola vaccine. Ebola was spreading very fast, and Merck put in a lot of money and efforts to develop the vaccine. So I was leading, a significant portion of that vaccine's regulatory development side, working with the regulators in Europe and FDA and many others worldwide. And because of the speed of moving, because of the speed of development, we had to, make certain experiments much faster, and a certain amount of data we have to create on the go type situation. So it required a lot of creativity, a lot of thinking, a lot of risk benefit analysis, and then negotiating and educating the regulators, how the public health can be managed in a better way. And thank God that Merck was able to get the vaccine manufactured and approved on time, because we stopped the pandemic from happening, right? In the case of COVID, we were a little bit late as the industry, even if we were very fast. At least in the case of Ebola, we succeeded on first shot itself, and that made all the difference. Otherwise, we would have been at a very different place. Now, as you know, in our society, you never get any points for stopping something. You only get points for, when you fix some problem. So Merck never got any credit in some ways for Ebola vaccine. It was basically probably lost money on it overall. I do not know the financial details, but I'm just saying that. But it was a big public service project, and we were able to save so many lives, especially in sub-Saharan countries, where, as you know, even the accessibility of these things is far lower than the rest of the world. So that was the most enjoyable project for me. Most frustrating I can share with you also was working COVID vaccine, because the 4 vaccines I worked on, all 4 of them failed. So they didn't succeed in terms of getting approval with FDA. But, at least we tried. And then Pfizer and Moderna succeeded, so that's really good, for us.
Gotcha. So you're known for your expertise in process simplification, efficiency gains. Can you provide an example of a major project where these skills resulted in significant cost savings?
Yeah, I mean, so there are several, but one of the interesting one in this world of AI and machine learning is I was working in a company, and in our business, when you make a manufacturing change, even if it's a small manufacturing change, you have to assess its impact on the regulatory filings worldwide. There are 180 countries, and each country has its own regulations and requirements, and then tell the plant colleagues what kind of filing it may require, right? So the whole process will take, a few weeks, couple of months, because you got to engage, FNDA, it's worldwide, centralized people, all kinds of people get involved. So I worked on a project with a supply chain personnel, somebody was heading the supply chain in this company. We co-sponsored a project based on AI and machine learning, and we actually developed a model which was able to predict the regulatory outcomes of these changes immediately, right? So, and then we implemented it worldwide. So we like, in terms of saving FTEs, we saved significant number of, FTEs by just using this AI machine learning tool on one hand. On the other hand, the speed of making changes went higher also, right? We took off few weeks from that whole journey, right? So we can make faster decisions. So I think it was great projects, in this digital age to work on. Yeah.
The something you talked about with the Ebola, our generation, I guess, younger than me, but there are people that the COVID pandemic is the biggest thing they've ever seen in their lives, right? So you dealt with Ebola, then you've also dealt with COVID. What's it like behind the scenes in your world when you're on a tight time frame and you've got such a big potential fallout? What does it feel like to be behind the scenes? What is that environment like?
I mean, I know a lot of time people don't talk positively about pharma industry, but I can tell you what I have seen. The companies are so committed to public health. You know, when Ebola came in or COVID came in, Merck never thought twice about not investing in it and doing any business analysis, right? It was all decks on the, all hands on the deck from day one, right? That, okay, this is the crisis. We are vaccine expert. We got to work. We put, accelerated program in place. We ask, our scientists to work on it, and we work together with them from different divisions, departments. It's given high priority, and our CEO, at least in the case of Merck, Ken Frazier, was able to find funding for us to work on those. He had no issues. Like, he said, this is why we exist. Our industry exists for these things. The business will come when the science is there, right? There is a public service thing. I believe other pharma companies do the same thing. When it comes to this kind of, crisis, they all put their best efforts. But then it becomes like a war zone because you need to act so fast and you have to connect so many dots. So, I mean, I worked on long back on smallpox vaccine, and I can tell you, I without giving all the details because it was a little bit, a sensitive topic, but I was talking to, head of health and human services all the time on that project because it was so important to national, emergency preparedness, So it's just very different when it comes to these things. CEO is involved, CD gets involved, your health and human services get involved, FDA is calling you, WHO is calling you, and you're calling them also. It's like everybody. It's so much work, that's all I can tell you. You're working nonstop at that time. But you feel good about it because you have a ultimate goal or, purpose to deliver something to save the, public health at that point.
So you've worked with Merck, Genentech, Pfizer. Over the years, how has that regulatory landscape evolved where you worked in this area? And then kind of a follow-up to that, where do you see things evolving or heading in the future?
Well, I mean, listen, as the science evolves, the regulatory becomes more complex, right? More, scientific things we understand, gene therapy, cell therapy now, DNA editing, all kinds of things are coming our way. And we in industry are learning those AI, machine learning, we're going to get these compounds now using AI discovery, right? They're coming our way. And I think we in industry, we start educating the regulators, worldwide in terms of, what's happening, what is involved there. So shaping that regulatory world is very, very important. The complexity comes for us is because each country has its own regulation. I mean, we have some harmonization. You have this, ICH, we call it. So there's some harmonization at the high level. But when you go into the details, there are a lot of unique requirements for each country. And that's not going to change anytime soon. We cannot reach a stage, at least I can see it in the next 10 to 20 years, where we just get one application done in, say, US or Europe, and it's approved worldwide now. I mean, this is like every country has their own ways of working, their own requirements, and you have to, go through those. So yes, I think complexity will keep on increasing, and because science is becoming more complex, that's one reason. The second is, the smaller countries are becoming, more stronger economy, and they are learning. The education level is increasing in the world. So these countries are putting on their own requirements based on their own learning, right? So for my world, when I look at the globe, what the requirements were, 20 years ago versus today, they are much more. But there's a reason for it. You can understand why it's happening that way.
What do you see are the biggest, both opportunities as well as challenges in the industry going forward? And what impact or role do you see yourself playing in the industry?
Well, I mean, I think our industry has to adapt to the cost structure, right? I mean, we have a lot of pressure on the cost. The cost of R&D, as you know, is significantly higher than inflation rate always, because the science is evolving so much. So that's always in double digit what this cost us in R&D. And then I think for us, the avenue we have is to use more artificial intelligence and machine learning to speed up development or speed up, manufacturing or digitize our information to make faster and agile decisions. But the challenge will be to bring regulators worldwide with us also to agree with us on the outcomes using this machine learning type situation. So I think it's going to be back and forth for a while. And then what worries me at a personal level is that will regulators just put too much control over using AI and machine learning on many aspects, and that's unknown to all of us, where that whole discussion will go. My role is, my role is more about mentoring the young people coming to regulatory or quality or working with, smaller biotech to help them out, to basically work with them, collaborate to understand how to get the molecule approved, what experiments they should be doing, to navigate the complexity of development and regulations. So that's where I see my role, more about mentoring and helping the smaller biotech in the future. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What advice would you give young professionals who are just starting their careers in the pharmaceutical industry?
Yeah, I think we probably touched on it last time too. I do believe, and you will see a lot of people are probably like me, I do believe that you need to volunteer for many things in your career. You see an opportunity to learn something different, just go for it. Don't wait. Take as many as lateral assignments you can get, because if you're just waiting for horizontal growth, that or vertical, vertical growth, that may or may not happen, that easily, because of, each company has only certain number of high-level jobs, but younger in your career, nobody will mind giving you a chance to learn something new if you show your passion for learning and interest. So go switch roles, do different things, and try to learn as much as you can. And then one day find your niche also, then you spend few more years in that specialty, but don't stop in the beginning. Unless there's only one exception to what I'm saying, but even there you can do a variety of different things. If you're a deep scientist and once, subject matter expert, maybe for you it's very difficult to, go and do different things, and you may not need to because you're very focused on that research and outcome. But for most people, I will say that's the advice I will give, that go volunteer for things, attend, a national conference once a year at least to see what's going on in your field. Try to read through literature, what the experts in your field are doing. Get a sense of business environment around you, and connect with colleagues, make good connections with the people who worked with you, who are a few years senior or few junior than you in the career. Because some of them will rise faster than you, some of them will be rising slower than you. But once you have this connection, you will reach a stage where you will know so many people in the industry, within your own company, outside your company. You will grow, you will enjoy your career that way.
What keeps you excited about the industry, or are you most excited about today, that you feel like you could have an impact on?
Yeah, for me, I think right now I'm truly excited about the possibilities of gene therapy. I think they're gonna probably find solutions for some diseases which did not exist earlier, right? So that keeps me going. I also get excited about, use of artificial intelligence and machine learning in solving some of these things. Now, as a consultant, sometimes it's hard to get involved in those projects because those are usually with larger pharma, as you know, and a lot of them they do in-house. But, wherever I can, I am trying to, at least mentor people and help them out in that. So those two are my, big drivers these days.
Fantastic. I've enjoyed this conversation. The last one we had little internet technical challenges, and I wasn't always able to hear all of your answers in real time. I went back and listened, and you said some great things, but I didn't feel like I had a chance to follow up on them. This has been truly enjoyable. You alluded to something at the beginning of our conversation, and I want to encourage you to pursue this. You said something about perhaps writing, whether it was articles or maybe writing a book about the takeaways and the lessons learned from your senior mentors and bosses and things. I would strongly encourage you to pursue that. And I think a future interview, even as, the top 25 things I learned or whatever from my bosses in my career would actually be a fascinating conversation.
Okay, no, great. That's a good idea. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
What exciting that, yeah.
Nirdosh, thank you so much for coming on, and we will have you back again as you begin to release more books and more information. Very quickly, I saw you do have a book on Amazon. What's the title of that book, and so people can go and look for it?
It's really history of pharmaceuticals. That's it. It's about, yeah. So
it's history and background of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, JP. I appreciate taking the time. Talk to you soon.